Hello campers, Dr. Dickey here. It's been 4 months, but look what has arrived. 1 of 4, 2 of 4, 3 of 4, 4 of 4. My lithium iron phosphate cells have finally arrived. Let's get into it and check these and see how they are. So the process is going to be, look at the cells, make sure that they're straight, not swollen. QRC codes are the same. Their QRC codes are present, and all that. Those are the bus bars that I won't be using. So they're very well packaged. As you can see, they are lithium iron phosphate, nominal voltage 3.2, capacity 280. QRC code is intact. These are Eve cells. Looking down the edge of them, I don't see any swelling. I don't see any nicks. Everything looks to be in good condition. Excellent. I got these from let me put it up correct for you. So I got them from Sabin Global Battery Store. Paid a little bit more, but Sabin has a good reputation, and I wanted to make sure that I got truly grade A cells. So again, the process is going to be, I'm going to label these cells. Already got my little labels made up for my label maker. I'm going to mask them out. I am going to record everything in a spreadsheet of initial voltage and initial internal resistance. Then I'm going to capacity test them, and I'll show you the instrument I'm going to use for capacity testing here in a second. Okay. I won't show you a whole bunch of cells, but I'll just do 1 or 2. So mass is 5,354 grams. So 5.34 kilograms. 354 kilograms. Let me go get the IR checker. I'm going to use the RC3563 to do the internal resistance. And I know it'll be hard for you to see, but I will try to do it so that you can. Does not seem to want to stand still, but so I'm going to use the, let's see if you can see that. It's the YR1035 Plus. See if you can see what's on there. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but I'll try. And I'm getting about 16.16, that would be 16 microohms at 3.294. Alright, so that's cell number 1. Now I'm going to capacity test it. Let me go ahead and do cell number 2, just while I have you here. So it's just not one's a fluke. Okay, so again, cells seem to be very good, flat, no swelling, no breaks, in very nice condition. This one has a mass of 5.358 kilograms. Very close to the other one. It has an internal resistance of, do it the right way. It has an internal resistance of 0.17 milliohms, 3.294. Essentially the exact same voltage. Okay, so now how am I going to test these? To test these, I'm going to use the ZKE Tech, I think it's the EBC40L. So basically it has a 40 amp ability to charge and discharge, and so I can do a 40 amp on it now. These are 280 amp hours, so even at 40 amps, that would be, what, 7 hours? And of course they have to be charged up and then discharged down. I've got the program set. Let me see. See if you can see that. See if I can set it up so you can see that. So first thing I need to do is connect. Cycle test. Let me open the cycle test I saved. So it's going to go, I don't think you can see that, can you? I don't know whether you can see it, and I can't really, well, let me see. Hang on. Okay, so here is, well, I'm not going to open this up. Maybe it's easier to see this. I think it's easier to see this. So it's going to be constant voltage, 40 amps, up to 3.65 volts, cut off when the amperage gets down to 2. Then it's going to wait 30 minutes. It's going to do constant current, 40 amps, down to 2.5 volts, constant current discharge, D for discharge, C for charge, and then cut off when it gets to 0 amperage. And then constant voltage, current, charging, 20 amps up to 3.5 volts, cut off when the current gets to 5. Okay, that's what's going to be done. So, all right, so I've put these in. I'm going to hook the positive cable right up to the, if I can, hook it right onto the cell, which I can't do. Well, that's not good. I don't like that. And of course a separate lead for the voltage. Which, how am I going to do that? How am I going to hook up the voltage now? Well, the voltage has got to be separate. Alright, well, let me try this. I would have thought this would have been a lot, good God, just can't get in. I would have thought this would have been a lot easier to do. Well, of course not. Put these nuts on here. Alright, what I'm going to do is just snug these down. I'm not going to tighten them down really hard, but I'm just going to snug them down. I will actually torque them down when it comes to that. So now I'm going to hook the positive onto that nut, and the positive voltage sense should go on to the stud without touching the voltage is going to, where the amps are going to flow. All right, so that's set up. Now, let's start the test and see what happens. So all I have to do, supposedly, is come over here and do start. The volt curve is right here. Start off at 3.294, it's 3.33. The current is going up to, wow, it's saying over 40 amps, but it should be just 40 amps. I guess that's just at 40 amps. And so it's going to charge it up to 3.65 volts, and then it's going to wait 30 minutes, and then it's going to discharge it down to 2.5 volts, and then it's going to charge it back up. Now, of course, 0.2C would be a faster discharge than what I have. 40 amps is not enough to do 0.2C. It's probably 0.17 something or other C, but that'll be good enough. So I'll bring you back in 7 or 8 hours when this test is done, and hopefully it should test out at greater than 280 amp hours.
Okay, next day, and the test is done. It's just charging it up to the 3.3 volts, or 3.5 volts. I want to change that to 3.3 volts, which I did, but it didn't change, obviously. But as we can see here, see if I can zoom in on this, it shows it as having 287.3 capacity, for amp hour capacity. So that's good. That's 100% plus, another 2 or 3%, I don't know. But I did not like the way the connections were to the battery. I got a lot of heat initially when I had these connected the other way, doing 40 amps. Right now it's 20 amps, and they're just room temperature. There's absolutely no heat on there at all. But when I was first charging it up, not discharging it, when I was discharging it, it was okay. Let me turn the other way. I was discharging it, it was okay, but when I was charging it up and using 40 amps, those got a little bit warm. So I'm thinking what I want to do is I'm going to connect a wire coming out with a lug. So I keep the clamps, but I want to put something on it with a lug that I can lug on, that I can connect onto the battery to be able to hook that up, because I think that'll be a much better transfer. I didn't like the amount of heat that I was getting off of that. I'll show you that once I get it fixed up. Here is the dilemma I'm having. So this gator clip, whereas it's very nice, it does get hot when you're connecting it to the cells because there isn't a good place to clamp it on there. I'd like to take some 6-gauge wire, which I have no problem with. Wire, oh gosh, the wire I have. I'd like to take some 6-gauge wire and just marry it onto there, and then put a lug at the end of this, so that I could use a lug and keep the clamp for future use. But I don't see any way to do that. I could put it on this side and solder it on, but then it would have to go all the way through the gator clip. It would have to come in and go out like that, and I think that would generate heat in there, and I don't want that. So I think I'm just going to change this over and take this off, unsolder it here, and then solder on. I think that's about 8-gauge wire. So I'm going to use an 8-gauge quarter, even though this is 40 amps. Going to be 40 amps going through it. it's pretty small, but that's about the right size for bolting up to the top of the cells. It doesn't really have much more surface area than that. I guess I could use I'd like to use the 8 gauge 5/16. Now that's much bigger than the hole through there, but that would give me much more surface area. So I think that's what I'll do. I think I'll just, even though I won't be able to crimp it correctly, I can solder on this lead, even though it's very small going in there. I can solder that lead in there, and then I can use that to put onto the cells. I think that would probably be the best solution, and that's what I'm going to do. And I'll show you when I get it done. So I have replaced the 2 gator clamps with these 8 gauge 5/16 lugs, copper lugs. The wires on here are actually 10 gauge, not even 8 gauge, which to me seems small for a 40 amp system, but I will say the wires did not get hot. Just where the clamps were clamping onto the cells did it get hot. So hopefully with this, it will not get hot. Let's hook it up, run it, and I'll put the FLIR on it to see what kind of heat we're getting when we're running at 40 amps. So there's the cell. It's got nice, you put in these screws with a Allen wrench, and then you can clamp these down. So I'm going to put this on. Hopefully get nice surface contact. And again, right now I'm just going to snug them down. I'm not going to torque them, but I will when I actually do the cells with the bus bars. And I bought bus bars that are flexible and nickel-plated copper. All right. This should get much, much better contact surface area and should prevent any real heat buildup. If I ever have to go back to the gator clamps, I can just solder them back on. I mean, it's not a big deal. I would like to be able to have both. I could put Anderson connectors on there, 40 amp or 50 amp Anderson connectors, and do it that way, but right now, let's try it this way. Let's see. Going to go to cycle test, and the cycle test is going to be just like it was before. We're going to constant voltage up to 3.65, cut off when it gets down to 2 amps, wait 30 minutes, then constant current at 40 amps down to 2.5, and then it's going to recharge it back up to 3.3. So let us start it. Cycle test, cycle test, cycle test, start. There we go. Now it clicked on. And here we go. The graph is starting to get formed. All right, it's been running for about 38 minutes, and the terminals are room temperature. No problem. See if I can show you on the FLIR temperature profile. But yeah, you can see that the terminals are a little bit warm, but they're like 24 compared to background temperature of about, well, 23.9, 24. There. Actually, now the cables are getting warmer than the terminals, which is perfect, because I would have been very hesitant to leave this when I went to work with the way it was before, because it got hot enough that it felt like it burned me when I touched them when they were in the horizontal orientation, those big gator clamps. And now in the vertical orientation, they only got slightly warm, but now this is absolutely room temperature on those things. I think most of what I was seeing on the FLIR was due to reflective, these things, if they're reflective. So yeah, actually cables getting a little bit warm because, like I said, 10 gauge wire is a little bit small for 40 amps, but you know, going to get some heat loss, but not that much. The cell itself is still staying pretty cool. Very impressed. Let's see what the capacity turns out for this. So I am continuing to process the cells. This is the second cell, and you can see right now it's already 286 amp hours capacity, and it's about to switch off and go back to charging it back up to 3.3 volts. Had a really weird thing happen in that I think you have to actually manually shut this, the ZKE Tech ABC40L tester. I think you have to shut it all the way off manually with the switch in the back, and then turn it back on, and then reboot the software and reconnect to get it to understand that you're doing another cell. This is the second cell only, and after I got the first one done, I went ahead and was testing the second one, and very, very strangely, I checked on it, and it had only charged up to about 3.4 volts, and then it went into its 30 minutes rest and was going to do the constant current discharge. And I was like, no, it clearly says set to 3.65 volts, but the current dropped to 2 amps when it got to 3.407, I think. And so I stopped it and tried to get it to reset, and I thought I had it reset. I ran it again, and it charged it back up to 3.65, and then went into its 30-minute wait, but it was 3 hours. It still wasn't going to do the constant current discharge down to 2.5 volts. So I stopped it again, and I finally had to shut everything off and start it up again, and then this test ran, and it quickly had it back up to 3.65 volts, because that's pretty easy. And there it just ended. And so it just ended with the total of 287.7 amp hours. So these cells are all going to test out excellent as expected. So that's great. So I'm going to finish processing these up. I have some other things that I'm doing, and when it gets light outside, I'll take you out and show you what the next thing is that I have to do, because I just didn't think ahead, didn't recognize what was going on at that time. But yeah, the Basin, very, very impressed with their cells. I paid, like I said, a little bit more, but well worth it.